All right. So today we're here to talk about editing, as opposed to yesterday. It's like 2.5 topics, you know, and tuning, timing, and some comments about MIDI and cut and paste. So basically, the editing is divided into two realms, the horizontal and the vertical. So when you're talking about timing, you're dealing in the temporal, you're dealing with the horizontal. But when you're talking about tuning, we're talking about the vertical. We're talking about like those proportions, tuning. That's vertical editing, in my opinion. And now would be a great time, actually, to just show you guys that there really is no difference between frequencies and beats, I guess you could say. Everyone hear that okay?
Yeah.
Regular old kick drum, just going away, just going along, right?
Yeah.
All right, so this is a beat. Now we want, let me see. Cool. It's still a beat. It's still a beat. It's all right, it's not a beat anymore, but it's still a rhythm. It's still a pulse that we can hear as separate, distinct pulses, right? A little more, it'll start sounding like Harley Davidson. You go a little long, you go a little more, it starts sounding like maybe a helicopter. Now we're on the threshold of a tone. And it's just the same thing. Pitch and rhythm, there's this threshold between rhythm and pitch that is actually, I forget the actual number of hertz it is, number of pulses, but it's remarkably close to our brain alpha wave frequency. And in fact, when highways are designed and speed limits are designated for highways, there's a big consideration that the lines that are painted don't come too close to that frequency between rhythm and pitch, because it can hypnotize us, and we'll be driving off the road. So there actually is a consideration for this visual rhythm. But I just wanted to demonstrate that what is, it's all the same thing, and it's just nice to have heard that threshold being crossed. I think that's a good thing to have recorded, and just. I don't know what you're going to do with that information. I have no idea.
I don't know either, but it's interesting.
It is. It's, sometimes I just want to. There was a professor at conservatory that in our whatever that parting speech, and he said, never lose the ability to wonder, to never forget, never, always be aware of wonder, and maybe that's, the shortcut to wonder would be getting outside and seeing the stars, seeing the Milky Way or something like that, right? But most of us live in the city. I live in one of the most polluted cities in the world, so there are no stars here. You know, we can look at the moon and be like, the moon, but we have to find places where we, you know, subjects or art forms or books or whatever that just make us go, whoa, you know, we can't stop doing that. We can't stop being able to be blown away by something, you know, or at least given pause over something, you know. Interested people are interesting. Remember that. Stay interested and you will always be interesting. I wasn't planning on saying that. All right, tuning. How am I going to go
in your
through?
script?
No, it wasn't on the menu. I guess we should start with the overtone series. That's good a place as any. But I'm not sure how I'm gonna how I want to demonstrate this to you for you guys. There's so many different ways. Okay, this is a major third. This is also what you would call the open G and B strings on a guitar. And they are tuned correctly. They are tuned into tempered tuning. Now, the whole idea of tempered tuning was that music used to be a lot simpler back in the day. Let's say back in the day being Western Europe, 1,000 years ago. You know, I mean, there was this break that we don't even remember. It's kind of been erased from history by the Vatican. But I mean, music was really different before the Vatican stepped in, standardized things, and said, you know, did away with any music from the neck down, strictly vocal. Any dancing was prohibited. They were just completely against the whole. They're trying to break with the pagan tradition. So a lot of original European history is lost thanks to the Vatican. But they did standardize things, kind of like the way the Nazis standardized tuning. Anyway, the idea before tempered tuning was necessary back in the day, you had maybe your lute or your harpsichord even, and music was just simpler back then. It was in one that you were allowed to write in two keys, C and F. And within C, you could go to F, in the song, but you couldn't really go much farther than that. I mean, it was really simple. C, G, C, F, C, F, that kind of thing. Really primal European music. It's not primal in an evolutionary sense, except that it's like the Vatican did a reset, and then this is where they started again. After Gregorian chants were tuned in fifths. It was vocal, no problem. You have an instrument. The thing is, if you want to play in C major for real, E is a little flatter than we're used to hearing it. G is a little sharper than it would be in another key. And it's all relative to C, and it's all relative to the overtone series. It's an acoustic tuning system that only works if you stay in the key. So if you stay in C, you can tune your your E down a little bit. You can tune your G up a little bit. It was expected because that's the way those partials, harmonics are in nature. Like that partial that is the fifth in the overtone series is actually a little bit sharper than it is on the piano. And the one that is the third is a little bit flatter, the major third. The seventh is quite a bit flatter than we're used to hearing it, like considering it on the keyboard. And it does sound better. It does sound more natural. Remember how I will. Okay, I'm going to mess with. I'm also going to send you guys this demonstration on the guitar, me playing on the guitar, because I think it does a good job of explaining it as well. But for now, I'm going to mess with the B string, the B, the third of the two. You guys, that totally sounds better, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that sound better than, right? It sounds like two separate events, you know, and it is. It's like two separate events because it's not naturally where it ought to be. In nature, you know, that note is more like, and all of a sudden it sounds like one thing, right? I mean, talk about harmony, talk about like, you know, a nice, it's physically better. I mean, there's a physical reason why it sounds better. That's what I'm saying. And that's basically what we lost with tempered tuning, because with tempered tuning was a solution of convenience. Basically, music became more complex, and people wanted to play more chords, and the harmonies started getting more interesting, and maybe, you know, that got to a point where people were composing stuff where you could actually change keys, modulate to a new key in the song. And all of these things were like, people were writing them, but they couldn't find an instrument that could play it, because you couldn't get an instrument, a harpsichord, you can't get it to change key. You know, if you were really rich back in the day, you know, you had two harpsichords. One was in C and one was in F. That was the end of it, you know? And all of a sudden people wanted to, composers were evolving. And it got to the point where Bach wanted to showcase this new system, which he was totally on board for, because he had compositions that he wanted to be able to realize, you know, that changed key, used deceptive chords, and used certain, accidental notes and stuff, and just way more complex the way we know it is. And it was only possible by dividing the octave into 12 equal parts. He had to just do away with the natural resonance of a sound. And in order to be able to approve, you know, to enjoy, take advantage of complex music, we had to make a concession and say, okay, it won't sound as good in C, but it will sound, you know, like C major won't sound as good as it would if it was tuned to C, but every key will sound good. Every key signature, it will all make sense to each other mathematically, and, you know, and that was a big, so Bach wrote the well-tempered clavier, and he wrote in all 12 keys, and he just to demonstrate how cool this new invention is, which was a tuning system based on math and not acoustics. Acoustics is math, but you know what I'm saying? There's an organic quality to the harmonic series, the overtone series, that doesn't exist in our tempered world. I talk about this because...
Sorry, just a question. In that second example, are we more of... Sorry, I can hear my voice. In the second example, are we hearing more of the harmonic that's the major third?
I'm playing with the major third.
Right.
Yeah. In this here.
Okay.
I didn't mess with the volumes, but it just blends better than, like, the difference would be, this would be like the natural, what would occur in nature, and this is what occurs on our instruments. Now now that you got used to hearing a proper major third, you listen to a tuned guitar and you're like, it doesn't sound in tune anymore. You know, it's wild. It is wild. Let me see. And Logic is fun because you have all these tuning systems, something you've never seen in any other. You can make your own tuning system, or you can choose from ethnic Arabic, Chinese, Lu scale, mean to, I mean, it's insane. You can, if you write something in MIDI for like a string quartet, say, or MIDI instruments, you write something for MIDI instruments. Once it's done and it's all in there, play with the tuning system and see which one you like, because it's really something else. It's quite a blast. You know, I could show you the same thing on a guitar, which is this video I have. These two notes need to be the same note. It's a B. Right. But can a G and a B sound better than this? That's tempered tuning, a major third in tempered tuning. All right, let's sweeten that up a little bit. Let's drop the third, which would be the B, down a little bit. See, to me that sounds sweet, and now it sounds like one sound instead of two. Right? It's like nice, you know, way better. But is that in tune in a tempered system? The answer is no. See how far that is? See how good it sounds? You hear how good that sounds when it's in tempered, but then you can't get complicated on the guitar or any instrument if you tune like this. I'm just starting to try and get my shit together on Patreon. So that video is already there, but I haven't figured out why I haven't published the page yet. I'll get there.
Okay, I have a question.
Excellent.
Do you use that?
I do.
When you're...
I use it when I'm tuning in Melodyne. When I'm tuning horn sections, because it's more than I would ever ask from a horn section to know, you know, oh, now I'm playing the third, so I should, you know, bring it down a little bit, or now I'm on the fifth. You know, I mean, if you get like horn sections that work together all the time, they might instinctively get to it. Or if you're talking about a string quartet like the Emerson Quartet, then you're talking about, you know, they get it. They're trying to do that. They're trying to figure it out. And they record their records like, you know, I heard there was like, you know, in a single movement of a Bartok string quartet, there could be anywhere up to 90 separate recordings, you know, that they've got playlists and stuff. And so it's really, they're heavy on the editing, but because they're trying to nail that, you know, the acoustic thing, you know. So it takes a lot of dedication. And it's something I wouldn't ask for like a horn section coming to a session to do that. But then I take it into Melodyne and I can do that. And you can do things like, wow, you can acoustically tune each chord, even if they're not in the same key signature, you know. It's very powerful. It's to me, it becomes supernatural, like backing vocals. It's supernatural in the sense that it's more natural vertically at any given instant. But the fact that horizontally you got this, you know, these harmonies, these sweet harmonies on every chord, which would be impossible on an instrument, it's really cool. It's very powerful. And yeah, I like doing that. I do like, even if it were like MIDI horns, I could make it sound better. If they're perfectly in tune, like on the tempered tuning, I could make it sound better in Melodyne, for sure. Yeah, it's very powerful. And you can't expect people to recognize what it is they're hearing. They just say that sounds so nice. And, you know, you know, civilians, you know, non-musicians don't have, you know, we barely have the vocabulary to articulate why something sounds good or not, you know. And just imagine, you know, the common person. And the thing is, they do know. Their brain knows, their ears know, and they don't have the words for it. They're just like, I don't know, it just sounds better. I don't know, fuck it, you know. And that's, you know, It's not on them that they don't have the vocabulary to articulate these things, but they hear it. They hear it. And people hear perfectly tuned vocals now for a couple of decades, for a generation. And now there's a whole new generation of singers that sound like they've been tuned, like because they didn't know it was fake. You know what I mean? They listen to their favorite singer and they're like, they can sing, and they just sing like that when, you know, they're kids. And there's this whole new, you know, it's exactly like what happened after the 80s when drum machines became popular. And then real drummers started to have to sort of answer to a higher authority or something, because the common listener just got used to quantized drums. You know, they just did. They didn't know that, but you know, they became more sensitive to time because of the computers, and they expect more from humans because they didn't know any human. And it's the same with this new generation of singers. There's some singers out there who it sounds unnatural. I can't even reproduce what I'm talking about, but it sounds like they've stepped, you know, like on auto-tune. Just because that's what they thought the human voice did, you know, and they just sang until it sounded like their favorite singer, which is actually some robot. It's crazy.
Mhm.
So you got life repeating art. It's very powerful. I want to recommend for you guys a YouTube channel. The name of the guy is, this guy talks about so many wide range of subjects, and he recently put up something about fake guitar. And it's a fascinating 50-minute rabbit hole about frauds online, like stealing other people's solos and just mimicking, and people actually think they can play. There's that. And then there's whole philosophy section when he starts talking about what matters per genre and how we can actually categorize genres by their value systems. You know, so like in jazz, that's a value system that says, you know, playing someone else's music is just part and parcel of doing that. That's what you do. You play a tune that everyone knows, and you do something new to it. You know, that's jazz. Hip hop, to use someone else's lyrics, you know, to not be using your own lyrics is like criminal. That's like, you know, that's the worst thing. If someone find out you have a ghostwriter or something like that, you would be, I mean, ostracized is putting it not, you know. So the value system in hip hop, as far as original material goes, is very different than from jazz, for example. So there's that in the same video, and then he gets into this whole thing where people are benefiting from the lie. Something that Plato got into is like, well, if you lie to people and say, you know, this is the way it's supposed to be, and it makes people better, then is it bad to lie? You know, that kind of thing. And then you get people talking about, you know, singers that didn't know what autotune was and sing like it sounds like autotune, you know, and drummers that didn't know that a record was done with a drum machine, and they learned all the parts, and they became, you know, one of the most successful drummers in the genre, you know, it's fascinating. So the guy's name is Adam Neely, YouTube channel, highly recommend.
I have another question, Victor, about were you demonstrating earlier about tuning? When you use that, you know, like, oh, well, the major third, if I'm in E major, should go up, you know, 6 cents, or do you tune it by ear?
I tune it by ear. Yeah, I use Melodyne because I tune by ear, which is why I don't use auto-tune or something like that. There are going to be instances where what I do is based on the lead vocal, you know, so it might be like, you know, because then you get into some like fractal territory. It's like, okay, so the lead singer is singing the fifth, and then, but someone else is singing the second, which is like the ninth. So that's a fifth apart. So I might make the ninth little sharper because it's a relative fifth to what the lead voice is doing, which takes priority perhaps over the key of the song. I mean, the thing about Logic and Pro Tools, Logic was written for musicians, and it's great at music production. And Pro Tools was written for engineers, and it's great at music productions. Like they're both, one's got the engineering frame of mind, and the other one's got the musician frame of mind. So you open up Pro Tools and you'll see minutes and seconds, and you open up Logic and you'll see bars and beats. You know, it's already a different. And Logic is based on MIDI code, you know, whereas Pro Tools, not exactly sure what the core of Pro Tools engine is, but Logic's engine is based on MIDI. It's pretty wild, actually. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about tuning. I'm still in the tuning part of this, about the kick drum and the bass guitar, right? Or the bass line. Doesn't have to be bass guitar, but the bass line. All right, we kind of covered that because it is something, you know, I said that I could keep going back to the kick and the bass because it's there's something we can do in the editing stage to make it, that I always do. I think it's really important. Let me see if I can get this here. Okay, for example, here is a drum beat and a poorly played bass line on a synth. You guys all hear that? Show of hands. You guys all hear that? Cool. Can this sound better? Oh, yes, it can. Here's the kick. Now I'm just this is just the wave form. It's not the volume. It's, you know, one of those things, just to make it easier to look at. All right, what I do all the time, and I think it's really important, I want to demonstrate this to you. You'll probably recognize the musical value of this today, but also tomorrow we might talk about this because it really makes a big difference in the mix. When you're mixing a track, it makes a huge, fundamental difference in what's happening in the mix. So right now, let's separate each of these notes to their own thing. Now, got enough of this, got enough of this. Come on, give me more, give me more. All right, kick drum. Can this sound better? That first one, I'm okay with that. That's a little late. That's late. There's a snare drum up here, so I'll lock it to that. This one, yeah, that's fine. That's late. I can see that's late. All right, here's something I want to check out. Okay, as good a place as any. Let's say it's a little early. Drops before the kick drum, right? You guys hearing that? It's kind of like a low frequency flam. What happens is that the bass is stealing the attack from the kick drum because it's out in front. And I think this sounds better. All right, wait, let's keep it there. Get used to that. All right, check this. What's happening now is you've got the transient of the kick drum is the attack, and the bass is the tone. So the bass is adding tone to the kick drum is adding attack to the bass, and it's just a better sound than this. And oh, another one. I just think that sounds better, and you can really exaggerate it. I mean, it takes a while before it doesn't sound okay. All right, now we've gone too far. But you can see I'm not being very fine about where I'm throwing this thing. I'm just getting it out of the way of the initial kick drum, you know? I mean, you could probably get a little closer, it's fine. Yeah, that's cool. Oh. See, this one's, you know, already a little out there, a little far off to the right, and it sounds cool. If you put it here, it just, you know, in my opinion, I guess, or do you guys agree that it doesn't sound as, you know, whatever the word you want to use for good? You know, good isn't a value, it's an opinion. But I think, you know.
Sorry.
So I you know, in my opinion, it sounds better. And in the opinion of the mix compressor, it's just, you know, I mean, if a machine had an opinion, it would prefer this as well, because low frequencies have high energy, very high energy. They require energy to be heard, and they generate energy to hear the same thing as in a high frequency. You know, if you guys are familiar with, well, you don't even have to have been to like a reggae sound system, you know, but if you've ever seen a sound system, you know that the bass speakers are big and the treble speakers are small, and that the bass speaker needs a power amplifier of like 5,000 watts, and the tweeters need an amplifier of like 500 watts because they require less energy to get the sound out, you know. You know, if you want to hear natural low frequency, you need a blue whale, but if you want to hear natural high frequencies, hear a bird. I mean, it's like that. And the thing is, even if we don't hear these sub-frequencies, I'll probably get more into this tomorrow, but maybe we'll get into this today because tomorrow is a heavier day. The thing about low frequencies is even when we don't hear them, the equipment does and responds to them as if it's loud, even if we're not perceiving it. So low frequencies can really force a compressor to work too hard. If the mastering, if it's been mastered and delivered to Spotify or whatever with a real excess in low frequencies, it might force the algorithm to lower the volume on it, and that's disastrous for anybody who wants their song to be heard well, you know, while it's streaming. That's why I said yesterday that, like, you know, at the mastering stage is possibly the highest potential for destroying the project, you know, because one slip like that, you know, just like, even if, you know, if you haven't paid attention to the loudness, you know, if a master goes out and they haven't really thought about the way the loudness is perceived, and maybe they measured the output in the wrong way or something, and then what happens if your master goes out too loud? When it goes to streaming, it'll be quieter than the others, you know, because even YouTube has a limiter. I think all the streaming services have some kind of way of making sure that the signal doesn't pass a certain loudness. Okay, so I got my idea across as far as synchronizing low frequencies. It's super important. You know, you may only have two things going on in the mix with low frequencies, and you're going to want to make sure that they are working together, you know. I said I was going to talk about Metallica yesterday. I was going to talk about Lars. And I wanted, because question of psycho-musical perception, and how far you can take it, as far as drums are concerned, because as long as we're talking about any kind of popular music, and if there are drums, where the drums are is where the beat is. And it's been only maybe in the last 10 years or so where that has been creatively challenged, with like people like Dilla and people who are like displacing the drums so much that we no longer rely on them, we no longer rely on the kick drum to know where one is. Maybe the snare is always right on, but I'm sure you guys have all heard examples of, this kind of shifting going on. I mean, in the big history of music, it's a very recent thing to happen. I like it because it's humanizing in a way. I mean, and I could understand somebody who works in a genre with a drum machine all the time, that after a couple of generations of that, they start getting tired of machines and they're looking for a solution. Whereas people who never went to the machines have never had this reason to respond so radically to time itself. Getting to Metallica, this is the thing. Why do they sound good if Lars is such a bad drummer? And if you measure a drummer by their ability to keep time for how long they can keep a beat, Lars can go like 3 bars, 4 measures maybe before he goes out of time. If you've ever seen the documentary Some Kind of Monster, I mean, they pretty much, show it to you right there. He just, he does these gestures that goes from one, thing to the next, and then he starts some other thing, it's a little schizophrenic in a way. And it shouldn't work. It shouldn't work. But the thing is, he always does it. I mean, he's incredibly consistent with these variations. So he always does that little like extra pause before a chorus or something, or he might always slow down when he goes back to the verse, or that is like one tempo and the rest of the tune is a different one. Whatever it is he does, he always does it. They rehearse, they play with him. They learn what he does. He always does it, so they can learn what he does. They do it, and the result is symphonic. It is no different than a great conductor getting an orchestra to work organically from one moment to the next, but together, And when you think of opera and the things you have to do, some of it just, it's, if you think about like orchestration they did for cartoons in the 40s, it's just amazing what they could get out of it. Even though it was based all on a click track, they were writing in metric modulations, so it's a little different. It's more like Frank Zappa than Metallica, But the fact is, if you play with the drums, it sounds great, and the drummer has to be really pretty far out before it doesn't sound good. Now, like a drummer when we think of a drummer that doesn't play in time, we're thinking of somebody who maybe just slows down, which is like the worst thing ever. We can add energy, we can accelerate during the song, and we can get away with it. But if you lose energy, if you decelerate the tempo, everyone feels it, everyone hates it. It's bad. That's what we call bad, whatever bad is. It's an opinion, not an value. If someone sings a little sharp, we're okay with it. Peter Tosh, John Coltrane, we're okay with it. But if you go flat, we don't even know the names of people who sing flat because nobody wants to listen to them. And there is an exception. I will say there is a certain style of singing in Brazil, in Brazilian music, where they don't quite hit the note. Like, And for me, it works because the song is about suffering or something like that, you know, and it's actually very effective if you want to talk about suffering to sing flat, but not really flat, but just get a little, you know, don't quite make it, and that actually does convey. Well, to me, I suffer. I don't know about you guys, but it conveys suffering to me because, you know, the note's not in tune. But if you go sharp of the tune, you go north of the tune, we're fine with that for a while. It has to go pretty far out, you know, before it bothers us. Not like just a couple of cents down. Well, just a couple of cents flat, and we feel it. But if it's a little sharp, we not only does it not bother us, but we might like it. There was a Ben Webster was a saxophonist in the 30s that played in a big band, and he said he always played sharp so that he would stick out in the section. So that was vanity, and that was you know, ego, and maybe not the best thing for the whole, but he knew how to do it. You know, he used that. And if you look at like tuning forks since, you know, Mozart's day, his tuning fork was 432 hertz. And I think there are others that are like as low as 430. I think Baroque music, you can find composers' tuning fork was like 430, you know. It's been going up steadily until finally it was standardized, I guess, in the 40s or 30s. And now we just use a 440 as the reference. But some people take liberties. Some groups take liberties, you know, with this because they want the effect that you can get because now that everyone's used to 440, how are you going to make Beethoven's Fifth sound interesting to somebody who's heard it dozens of times? You know, how do you make something so tired, you know, interesting again? You tune to 442. There are a lot of orchestras in Europe that tune to 442. There was a time when the Berlin Philharmonic, I mean, they took it really far. They're up to like 445 or something like that. In Sao Paulo, it's 442. The orchestra's tuned 442 because it adds a certain brilliance, and that could be conveyed by people who remember the tune, but now it sounds a little more interesting. You know, now that there's something to it that we can't articulate because we're just civilians and we don't think about it like that. We don't think about the science of it, you know. Conversely, in the 70s, the Philadelphia Orchestra in the States, with Eugene Ormandy conducting, he had the strings tuned down to 438. And the orchestra during that period of time was known as that sweet Philly sound. Nobody knew why. It was just what, you know, oh, that Philly orchestra, they just got, there's just something really sweet about it. And it was actually 2 cents down. And that was it. Other modern examples would be Van Halen or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix tuning their guitars down because it sounds heavier. It's a new sound. Not only it's kind of like a sound you don't hear on the instrument, you know, like people have gotten used to the electric guitar, but an electric guitar in E flat has less tension on it than an electric guitar tuned to E, you know, so it's a little sound is a little bigger. Maybe the strings sound a little more looser and cool. I mean, there could be all these different like reasons. Physically, the instrument sounds different. We perceive it as different. It's so there have been people who like definitely pay a lot of attention to these kind of things. Excellent.
Is it true that 442 it's a more natural tuning?
Yes, there are people who believe that. I mean, and I don't know how far I want to go down this rabbit hole, but there are what we could call conspiracy theories. The idea, which, you know, I don't say that in the pejorative because I have plenty of them. things that I believe, but I don't know enough about this. But people have said you can see that it's been said that the Nazis created 440 because it keeps people out of tune and easier to dominate. Okay, so I talked about the macro. And as far as timing goes, in the macro sense, getting back to Lars and this whole thing, when I'm mixing, I will edit the daylights out of everything. I will chop every guitar chord, every keyboard chord, every note on the bass. If necessary, I will get into the percussion. And of course, I make sure that the vocals, if there are backing vocals, that they are not, like the consonants aren't happening before the lead vocal. You know, you want to make sure, like the way I was saying that the kick drum leads before the bass. Well, the lead vocal leads before the backing vocals. So if the word is, if it's castles in the sky, you want to make sure the K's, the C and the K, the K is on the lead voice, and possibly remove it from the other ones. Don't even have it. Make it. I have a friend who specifically does backing vocals, and he's amazing. He doesn't pronounce consonants or S's. So it'd be like oh yeah, I, instead of castles in the sky, and it's amazing because the lead singer's got all the consonants, and it's like it's perfect. I mean, it sounds like
I was in a choir, and our we had to do that. He said, "No consonant now. Just stop saying them. We just want the tune, not the consonants." Exactly. It's
a big deal. Like with well, especially even with mixing, I like that aesthetic that the choir director would want the same thing. Did they want everyone like that, or just like did they say, well, in this passage the sopranos can pronounce them?
Yeah, usually he was avoiding everyone to say it except a good soprano or, like the leader. Exactly the same.
Very cool. Very cool. It's very effective. So yeah, when I'm working with the voices in Melodyne, for example, with backing voice, one of the things I do in Melodyne that people don't think to do, I don't know if you guys ever have any experience with that program, but it's really nice.
I try a bit of it.
It's really, I use it as a de-esser. And that is the reason being, like if I'm going to tune a note in Melodyne and there's an S attached to the note, if the word is soul, I'm going to cut the s, and I'm just going to oh, because when you move an S in Melodyne, it sounds really weird. It's like a dead giveaway that it's been tampered with, or it's unnatural. It's unnatural. It does this like kind of thing. It does. If the S isn't where it was recorded, if you shift it at all, it gets weird really fast. So I'm so used to just separating the S's in Melodyne. While I'm there, I draw them down. I just make them quieter. And I don't have to use a de-esser so much when I'm mixing. It's great, in preparing for mixing. But also while I'm there, and if we're talking about backing vocals, you can just shift them in time to make sure that they're behind the lead vocal. And if certain Ks, you can make them quiet or just erase them, delete them, consonants, whatever makes a better result, the lead voice is the leader of the mix. It's the leader of the song. It's the leader of the arrangement. It's everything. It really is. And if the song is instrumental, it's almost more difficult to mix a song without a voice, because the voice is such the principal part that, you know, you can get away with other things in the background as long as the lead vocal is well represented. But when it's an instrumental, you know, kind of everybody's kind of got to be on point, you know, like in the mix and in the performance and in the arrangement, and then the soloist, if it's a, you know, if there's a soloist, then you can bring that in, you know, as far as a focus, you know. So yeah, I mean, you get the lead vocal right, and everything else should fall into place, you know. A lot of people, I might as well get into some of these mixing ideas today because it's pretty light on subjects for me to talk about, and I'm still waiting for way more questions, and I'm not getting them. So I'm going to start talking about mixing.
Victor, just a question before you move on.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned that you would go sort of into a mix and edit, you know, maybe every chord stab or every, you know, bass note in the way that you demonstrated. Is that usually, I mean, people go to you because they expect you to get into that kind of detail with the mix. They record it and knowing that that's what they're going to get from you, or is that just the way you work always, or?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Like, in a way, a musician's cool with like recording something and then knowing that you're going to like place everything in a kind of, you know, in that way, like, so move things around and stuff.
The result is always natural because I do it to the drums. I mean, also maybe we think about the kind of projects that do come to me. A lot of reggae, a lot of ska music, a lot of dance music. I have never heard someone say, "Oh, it sounds fussed with," you know. I mean, I've even like fixed, you know, the piano player played a major instead of a minor, you know, and I can fix that. And maybe sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, thanks for," you know, mostly I just hear it sounds great. I don't, because it's the result is natural. The result, it doesn't sound manipulated because I didn't touch the drums. and it, so the drums can breathe a little bit here and there, and as long as everybody's with them, it sounds the way it's supposed to, or something. Also, there's that idea that like you tune a horn player's performance and they don't say, "Hey, thanks for the tuning," because they didn't notice. I mean, because if they would have noticed that they were out of tune, they would have tuned. You know, like they didn't know they were out of tune then, and they don't know they're in tune now. So it becomes moot. It becomes like just sort of like, I don't really bring it up, you know. I bring it up to you guys. I'm sure some people have figured it out. I mean, I do talk about it. It's not a secret, but I don't think people know how much. I don't think they have any idea how much I'm, you know. And the thing is, you can do it. You know, imagine it's a ska song. All right, so you have 8 of these chunk per bar, you know, or 4 or 8. You know, and it's a 3-minute song, so you've got, you know, whatever that is, 128 things, events, just on the guitar. And I can do it visually by looking at the hi-hat. You know, where's the hi-hat? And I look at the hi-hat waveform, and I just make sure the guitar is always with the hi-hat. And while I'm doing this, my ears are taking a break, or I could be listening to a podcast, or I could be just, you know, listening to Massive Attack, you know, and I'm just doing the graphic work, you know, and it works. I mean, there have been times when I'm like, I think I'm fussing too much, and I leave something, and then later on in the mix, when you can hear everything really well, I'll be like, no, that thing I thought was, you know, I wasn't. I was right. I should go back. And in fact, when I get into tuning something, maybe when I start tuning a voice from the beginning of a tune, by the time I get to the end, I check the beginning again, because in the beginning I'm like, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess with it too much. You know, we kind of like want to keep things, but by the end I'm like, well, you know, no, it still sounds like the singer if it's in tune. Come on, let's just really get in there. So yeah, when I start editing something over a long period of time, I will get more and more finicky about it by the time I get to the end, and then I'll have to go back to the beginning and be like, yeah, it really does need to be more accurate than it was.
Does it mean that then the way you record things has to be separate? There can't be any bleed on anything, because, or does it not matter too much because the movements are so small? What you're shifting around is, you know.
There are that's a good question. It depends on the content, of course. If it's a reggae tune, there's no, hopefully the guitarist, for example, didn't record with a reverb on the amp. So then if they did, then I will go in there and I'll do everything I did, but I just have to make sure that the audio makes its way to the next event. You know, there can't be any, and that's time consuming. You really are, you're dealing, that's like 2 or 3 clicks per event rather than one, you know, just to make, you got the event right. You're going to make sure that audio tails out all the way to the thing. And the editing is so, I used to feel bad about it because we didn't do this in the 80s and in the 90s. We recorded to tape, and the mix was what we could make of it, you know? And you couldn't spend time mixing a song, not only because maybe, you know, studio costs could be a consideration, but the other consideration is that tape, the more you play it, the less treble you get every time, because the friction of driving the tape over the tape head, every time you do that, you lose a little bit of treble. You lose a little bit of high frequencies. And if you're mixing for like 4 hours on a tape, and then all of a sudden you realize like every time you're listening, you're adding a little more hi-hat, or you're adding a little more, you know, high frequencies to the lead vocal, it's because it is getting darker. Your ears aren't getting tired. The thing is getting darker. And you have to work before you lose the high end on the tape. You know, that was a big thing. And people didn't take their time. People would, you know, make a mix all the way through, 3 minutes, stop, let it rewind, and think about the decisions they were going to make before they did it again. I would sit there for like a good 5 minutes going, all right, first verse, I got to ride the voice down a little more here, that, and then second verse, and I think, yeah, all right. You make all the moves while you can still hear the mix in your head in silence. You make the moves on the desk and everything, and then you hit it again and you record that. Because you didn't want to spend, you couldn't spend time fidgeting around and letting it loop, because you would literally destroy the tape, the recording on the tape. So there are, you know, not only monetary reasons that we had to work fast in the mix, and as far as recording, we could take a lot of time doing that. But this whole edit stage didn't exist like it does in film, like it always did. And I was watching a documentary recently about editing, film editing, and how important the history of it, and how it's the edit that tells the story. And it's really, I started to feel like, you know what, really, the edit is where the film comes to life. That is where the story comes to life. And I shouldn't feel a way about editing too much, you know, a song. And I will, as a producer, I'll get involved. Like I'll say, look, this second chorus doesn't have to be repeated. Let's just, you know, go once. The second time we sing the chorus, you sing the chorus. Let's cut out half of it and go straight to the bridge, because people know the chorus already. So that's editing in more in a cinematic sense. Cut out the part we don't need anymore, condense, make every event mean something. Try not to repeat stuff. Make something different every moment. And there's a lot of power in that. As a producer, I can get to do that. I can shave off a bar on a track, or on a song, or I can add an extra bar before the chorus just to give a little more of a pre-anticipation. These odd numbers of bars and stuff like that. They can be really effective. So and this whole thing about making it sound as good as possible in a way that machines can't, in a way that a machine can't, in a way that a piano can't. A tempered instrument can't sound as good as I can make it sound. Whereas we can, as a human being can make it sound. We have to manipulate. We have to use the computer to humanize performances. I do that a lot. I mean, there's this business of cut and paste, because either there's cutting and pasting backing vocals has just been considered the greatest thing since Pro Tools. Like the ability to sing the chorus once and use those backing vocals every time. It's great as far as like cutting down on studio costs. The time is money in the studio. Or maybe it's difficult maybe it took a long time to get that first chorus sounding really great, many takes of each singer. You got it locked down. It's like, all right, that took all day. Now we just bop, dropping in the other two. I get it. It's saving time, but and there are plenty of good reasons to do that. But also sometimes it happens just because people don't want to do the work. And then I have to do the work because I'm there in Melodyne trying to make each chorus sound different. So I'm like trying to create humanity where there wasn't any, and I need a computer to do it. So we're in that, we can make the computer work for us. We don't have to work for it. Think about one of my big heroes in music, in the history of music, is Lee Perry. And actually, for me, he just represents what happened in Jamaica and why dub is so special. And for me, it's because historically humans played to an organic clock for all of time until the 1920s, when film and sound became married into what we know as the cinematic experience now. But even before film, like when film didn't have sound, it was still just orchestras playing, and the clock was a conductor, or the lead instrument in a chamber group, and it was always a human organic clock. But all of a sudden, now with this opportunity of synchronizing music to film, they needed to work on the clock, literally. And the beat, 120 BPM, 2 beats per second, just became the A440 of time, the reference. And from that point on, musicians had to play to a click track. They had to obey the machine in a way. Like the machine has dominated the musicians. Musicians have to play to the machine. And then, we have devices that are created like reverb or echo. And these devices were created to simulate reality. These devices were created to make somebody sound like, for radio shows or something, if somebody wanted to sound like they were the part of somebody who's lost in a cave, and you put them through a reverb, there was a practical purpose, and they were trying to approximate reality, and echo, if someone's in a canyon, you use an echo. If somebody's in a bathroom, you use a reverb, whatever it is. In film, every day, all day, every day, until now, these effects are used that way to simulate reality. But then you get the dub movement in Jamaica, And for the first time since the click track, they're using machines to create counter rhythms to the drums. They're timing the echoes to the drums to create this polyrhythm, you know, like this African thing. They're making the machine do that. They're tuning the reverb to the key of the song, so that when the singer sounds more in, you know, they're making the machines behave musically. And that was like the moment when humanity took music back from the machines, in a way, in it's very romantic, you know, kind of a way that I look at it. And I know that Nico's already heard me talk about this before, because I've done some workshops in Switzerland, courtesy of Nico, and so he knows a lot of what I'm talking about now. But I mean, it's really fascinating to me. It's like, it's most definitely an important moment in history that wasn't documented as such because it didn't happen in Florence. It didn't happen in Leipzig. You know, it didn't happen in Paris. You know, it's like, it's not in the Western European musical canon. It's not part of what we, you know, it's not legit music history or something. You know what I mean? But you understand, like, it is a very important moment in music history that hasn't really gotten the recognition that I think it should, you know, as a historian, right?
Well, so I'm a bit hesitant when it comes to these tuning discussions, because sometimes I listen to music that is too much edited, I would say, or maybe it's edited in a way that it doesn't sound as natural as yeah, I would like to, or the music that I love. That I think most of the music that I love is not as edited as much, and also when I listen to let's say NPR, these live music events, these tiny desk concerts, and I listen to those bands, and they sound just brilliant. And when I listen to their records, sometimes I think, "Oh, this is boring." And I think, where's the moment when it gets too much editing?
It depends, because for me, I would say if you can hear the editing, then you've gone too far. But there are genres out there where autotune, they want to hear that, you know? If we only wanted natural editing, if we only wanted, like, let's go back to cinema. Like, you know, editing it should be natural. We shouldn't see the cut, you know? We should just be following the story and not seeing the cuts. But there are films where the cut is everything. I mean, that, like, the edit is the joke or the feeling or the, you know. So it really depends. I mean, I know that you like music by musicians. I know that because we've worked together, and Joachim, I know that you prefer human beings playing music than, yeah. I mean, as far as I know, you've never told me that you really like electronica or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So I think in your case, what you're listening to, if it's well edited, you shouldn't be able to hear it, you know. I mean,
yeah, but I would also say that my daughters, for example, who are 18 and 17, they grew up with music of new music, but they also listen. They like to listen to old stuff as well, and they have no problems with unedited music. I think it's and is it hard for I mean, if you listen to old records from the Scatterlights, would you think they would sound better if they are edited? If they
Well, correct me, Victor, if I'm wrong, but we're talking here about editing in the purpose of enhancing a mix, right? We're not talking about editing in changing a performance or making a performance more perfect in regard to a machine. Because when you were talking about the kick and the bass and then the backing vocals and things like that, in my head, it's all about making the mix sound better.
Yeah,
right?
it's very yes, and it's relative. It's not. I'm not talking about a grid-based thing. So you're right about that. It is relative to. Doesn't have to be precise. Just has to be in real.
Because in my head, when you were talking about that, I was like, oh, he's changing the whole groove of the bass player by, moving each note, aligning with the kick drum or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then I understood where you were going to in regards to the frequencies and the transients and things like that, in order to enhance the mix and no bass frequencies conflicting to each other. But yeah, there's a fine line, right?
I don't know. I used to be timid with it. Definitely. I was definitely like, should I really dig in there and be so precise with everything? My observations over the years is that nobody has ever said that doesn't sound like me. The musicians, they never said that. Yeah. And the other thing is, like, real human beings exist that can play with this accuracy. It can be done. It doesn't have to be done on a computer. If you listen to Anthony Jackson playing bass with Steve Jordan on drums, you're listening to a level of precision, or like a Steely Dan record with Chuck Rainey and on bass and Bernard Purdy on drums. You're hearing, like, they're playing with an accuracy that people try to get now on the computer, that I'm trying to get on the computer, and I'm okay with it. Because I know there are humans that can do this, and I have 2 times in my life put up a bass line in a mix, starting my edit, and every note was exactly like X milliseconds after the kick drum. It just was there already. The bass player just did it. Like, he knew the drummer that well, or they both played that well. 2 instances, neither of them were me. I edit my bass lines for sure, and I'm grateful I did. And what happens when you're mixing is when the low frequencies are aligned, the mix compressor responds to them at one time, and then you get that. There's a certain sound we call, like, the knock, or like the pump, or the breathing, or something. When the mix compressor, you kind of hear it activate, and it gives sort of adds something to it. It almost, it creates the sound of an impact without actually making it louder. It just, one of the best mix bus plugins is actually called Impact, and it's based on the famous SSL compressor, mix compressor, that would simply, it just gave it something. There was some kind of, whatever word you want to try and find to articulate it, but the compressor itself participates in a dance music, and in some great rock music, like Arctic Monkeys. It's really crazy when you hear those mixes, and I can hear, like, the mix compressor, like, pumping. Chad Blake, I think, is the engineer. Fascinating. This guy's fascinating. He spent half of his career doing everything strictly analog, and then at some point he's like, I've assimilated the vocabulary of analog behavior, and he could simulate it on now. Like I heard a record, I was like, see, that's why analog will never go away. I was listening to Arctic Monkeys. I was like, that's why analog. Then I saw the engineers, Chad Blake. Oh shit, it's all digital. Oh my God. That guy's amazing. He's amazing. I don't think you can take it too far. I don't think so, because I'm not messing with the drums. So the drums are a natural human performance, and as long as I'm not fussing with that, and everybody is with the ebb and flow of the drums, the result is very, very natural. It doesn't sound wrong. And in this day and age, as far as tuning goes, people are getting much more sensitive to out of tune vocals. And I know I have records where people sing in tune. I don't think I like them because they're out of tune. I think I like them in spite of the fact that they're out of tune, because a well-written song is more important than the performance, or maybe it's the expression in the voice that makes me.
But that's funny you haven't talked about editing drums, so far, because I've been in some sessions. The first things they do is edit the drums, to make it tighter.
I do that, but not the performance.
Oh, you do that because you haven't talked about that.
Well, tomorrow I could talk about it today. We could try, but I don't mess with. I'm not editing the horizontal performance. I'm editing the alignment of the microphones. I'm aligning the microphones, and I'm making sure that the phase and the polarity are all aligned.
Yeah.
So if that's considered editing the drums, that's the first thing I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because in Pro Tools, you take your drum tracks and you split everything, every little transient, and you can reset the groove or make it tighter, whatever.
Pro Tools is the best at it.
First thing.
Yeah, Pro Tools is the best at detecting transients. They're just, however they do it, they're not telling anybody, In Logic, you can do things like that, but I just don't like what it does to the transients. Like when it tries to, you try and quantize an audio track, and there are artifacts. There are just like, it gets blurry, for lack of a better word. It lacks definition. I don't like what Logic does to the tuning or the timing. I don't use it for any of that. Pro Tools is probably more advanced. I don't know if I would even get into it though, because if somebody really missed a beat, on the drums, yeah, I will most definitely nudge that event, but it has to be pretty far out for me to want to address it. What I'm addressing is that are the overhead mics. The first thing I do, I guess I could do this now and just show you editing drums. Let me see. I guess it goes back to, first of all, it's definitely a case-by-case basis. We're definitely talking about everybody's experience combined with when they heard the thing, with combined with what they were doing, with why we like a song has, there are a lot of variables, there are a lot of factors in why we imprint a song, but basically between the age of 19 and 22 is the music that means the most to us, will mean the most to us for the rest of our life. It'll always have, it'll always fire those neurons in exactly the same way, like a McDonald's hamburger, like the repeatable experience, it's, smell is a bigger trigger than music or so, maybe McDonald's has something on music in that sense, because humans we like control. We need control. And if we can repeat an experience, it is, we are satisfied with our ability to control the universe for that moment, that we were able to make something predictable happen is very satisfying to humans, I don't know how I got there. I'm sorry. That's you guys didn't sign up for this. You guys didn't sign up for this. I'd already separated the the first thing I do is look at the overheads, and I use the snare as a reference, and I see that both waves start at the same, that the snare starts at the same point in time on each microphone. These were two separate mics that I joined later for convenience. But I make sure that they're both starting, that the snare drum starts at the same point. I use the snare and not the kick because when I'm mixing, it's very rare that I use any low frequency information on the overheads. I use them for the high frequency stuff. So that's the first thing I do, is I make sure that the two overhead mics are together first, and then I take the snare drum, because the snare drum will be like here originally. Then I make sure, first of all, I make sure their snare drum is the same snare drum. And then I move the snare drum microphone to where the overhead mics are, because the snare mic gets the snare first, you know. So it's going to be earlier. But so now this, you could say this is editing, you could say this is unnatural, what I'm doing, because you know, because this isn't how it was recorded, right? And this isn't what they heard when they were recording. But I would say recording drums is also an unnatural experience, because you're supposed to be in the room with drums, not having, you know, you shouldn't have like 6 different ears that you put near your drums. That's not how we hear drums. So any of this, I mean, just recording drums is unnatural, and using microphones, compared to listening to them in the room. So I'm okay with it. Then I would go to the kick drum, make sure the kick drum, even though I don't really care about the low end on the kick drum, but if there's any high end information or something like that, I want to make sure it hits the overheads at the same time. And then I'll do the same thing for the toms, or whatever this is. This one was a little more difficult, but I prioritized the snare drum. So this one, that hasn't been mixed yet, so I haven't addressed this polarity issue. But it's also it's a phase issue. You can see it. You can see that this timbali was on one side of the drum kit, so it's closer to one overhead mic than the other. So I would normally, I would make it like this. I would want the first transient to the beginning, and I guess that's how I decided to do it here, like this or this. But basically, I would prioritize the first transient out of the stereo overheads, and if it's on the right side, then I will pan the timbali to that side, and that should be enough to get some real clarity. And what happens after doing all this stuff to the drums is that you achieve clarity. You achieve more. The more clarity you have, the less volume you need. Like if it's clear, if you can hear it, then there are a lot of ways to achieve clarity, and volume should be like, it's like Art of War. It should be like the last thing you do, is mess with the volume knob. I think about the voice, and I think about what I don't want interfering with the voice. So if there's like an acoustic guitar with a lot of pretty low end, I will remove it in cold blood, because I only want to hear that nice low end on the voice. You know, that low mid range. You know, bass is bass, kick drum is kick drum. But if we're talking about like Fender Rhodes or low end of the piano, or an acoustic guitar, horns, you know, anything that could get in the way of the voice, it will be dealt with extreme prejudice. I will make sure that I don't have to mess with the voice to hear it better. And there are other techniques.
I've got a question.
Oh, excellent.
Sorry, I've got a question. as a, you know, like now you're saying you're looking for clarity, and I totally understand aligning everything. But let's say now you have a rock steady band or a band that wants to sound like the Scatterlights, like the old days. Do you on purpose not align things so you
Yes,
don't have that clarity, and it can brings you back to the genre itself from back to the 60s, 50s?
yes, I would respect it.
Okay.
Especially if
And
they did it
then,
right. I mean, if they did it right, you know.
yeah. So out of curiosity, because recording drum is it's an art by itself. That's what I believe. But
Totally.
out of curiosity, do you get like sometimes, do you nowadays in 2025, do you knowing that you know, people know that now you can edit things and align things, how much drum tracks do you get, like perfect drum tracks when perfectly in phase and you don't need to touch anything? You know, just out of curiosity, out there in terms of clients you get, you know, do you really get like proper drum tracks, or do you always have to align things and check out the phase and all this stuff?
I get them sometimes. Definitely not enough. I don't get them enough. I don't get properly recorded drums enough. In fact, I do a lot of fixing. A lot of
Yeah.
fixing. You know, some people call me fix engineer, not mix engineer. Mix and fix.
Yeah.
Replacing the kick drum, replacing the snare drum, or blending with the original snare drum. You know, depending on how crudely it was recorded, you know. As far as performance goes, I'm very happy to say I haven't dealt with any like quote unquote lousy drummers in a long time. Yeah, it's been, but even in that instance, I mean, they'd have to be really far out for it not to sound right when everybody plays with them, for all the reasons I cited earlier, the psychomusical experience. But yeah, but when I do, man, it's such a treat to get like properly recorded drums, all the right polarities. Maybe they've already done the phase correction, you know, or the alignment, because there are plugins that can do this. For example, like it's very common to record a bass guitarist with two lines. Like one is a microphone on the amplifier and one is a direct into the computer, and they both arrive at milliseconds apart from each other, because one is going direct and the other one is going out to an amp, enters the atmosphere, hits the mic, leaves the atmosphere, goes back into, and there'll be a delay, you know.
One questions about your overhead microphone. You were speaking about the overhead. It's two microphones that you use as a mono pair, let's say, or really a stereo recording. Because when you record with two microphones, the phase between the two microphones, this is the information about the stereo panning of each instrument for the drum. So if you move the two track one and each other, perhaps you can lose information, or you assume that the snare is at the middle, so the phase should be the same on the side, the both sides of the microphone as a reference.
Yes, I mean it is a struggle, and it is all relative, because you do want a stereo image. You don't want it to sound like a dual mono drum mix, you know. But you can see also that you can't do it perfectly in a way, because like if there are toms, they're not going to be, you know, you can't get them. If you only use the snare as a reference, the other things will be out of phase, you know, to some extent, you know.
Yeah.
So you can't completely lose
so I mean that's a way to keep your stereo information, to keep your snare as a reference on the center of the image of the stereo.
Yeah. And I use the snare over the kick drum because it's closer and louder and easier to, to manipulate, to see, and to use as a reference, as a visual reference. It's nothing better than a snare drum.
Anything you do with room mics?
This is a personal thing. I don't like them. I don't use ambient mics.
Okay.
Maybe it's the class of recordings that I'm used to working with. I'm not an expensive mix engineer. In fact, I'm, I might be considered expensive in Brazil, but nowhere else, because of the exchange rate, you know what I mean? But maybe I don't get that caliber or yeah, it's like, I can't really say why, but it has, like, what the stuff that comes to me isn't always recorded in a great space. I mean, even since the pandemic, I think we've all seen that stuff is coming in from people's houses, and we have to put it all together and mix it, if that's what our job is. And it maybe because of that, people relaxed and started working more at home, and maybe sound quality overall has deteriorated because it's, in 2025, anybody can really make a song on their phone. It's just become so democratized, right? So it lowers the bar in that sense. So when I guess I'm used to working with some modest recordings, and the room mic only serves to tell you that it was recorded in a shitty room, like that it wasn't in, like I've worked in. So I always tell people, don't use room mics and don't use condensers. My friend like gave me this drum recording, and it was like square room, parallel walls, no treatment, and he decided to put a couple of fancy condensers in the corners to get the room, and he absolutely accurately got the room. It was terrible. It's like a dead giveaway. There's a certain like IR, what do you call that? Like a certain reflection that is a dead giveaway that it's a home recording. And that's in the room mics. So I usually dispense with them. Also, because and this is also subjective, I create the ambience in the mixes. I like everything to be dry, preferably everything in mono, that I can do the panning, and I can create, the short reverb on the left side, the long reverb on the right side, the short delay on the right side, and the long delay on the left side. And these four elements are, I create a place, an environment where I send everything to those one or four or all of those options, those four corners of the environment, So, and I do that. I want to do that. So I personally don't want ambient microphones. Also, if I'm tuning a horn section, the ambient microphones become unusable, right? Because the out of tune horns are in the room mic, and it would create this artificial effect with the tuned horn. You know what I'm saying? So there are a bunch of reasons I don't want. Some is for aesthetics, and some is for our practical reasons that I dispatch. First thing I do, if it says ambient or room on it, I've already it doesn't even go in the project. And it stays in the folder. But like there are, like, going back to the phase thing, the alignment thing, and the bass as an example. So the bass comes in, it's recorded the same bass line, it's being recorded on two different tracks, and it arrives a little bit earlier on one than another. There is a plugin, I don't know what it's called, but my friend uses it, and you use it on the recording input, and it automatically aligns them so that they arrive. It like adds a buffer to one or not. It figures it out. it figures it out and it times them so that they're synchronized when they're recorded. And then, a little less work for the mix engineer. And you can do that with overhead microphones. You can do that with any stereo source. You could make sure that they're coming in at, it's a plugin. I should find out what it is. Look for stereo alignment plugin or timing plugin or something like that. You'll find it. I think I don't know why I have MIDI as far as editing goes, because I think the whole point of MIDI is the versatility and the amount of options of editing that we can do with it. I don't use it that much, but I do. Let's say, all right, let's go back to my screen here. And I'll do it the way Logic does it, but I think most programs have a way of doing this. You separate your kick drums. All right, that could have been better because it's hearing too much. Cool. And then with this, I can create a MIDI track with a sample in it. So that's both of them. But if I was listening to this, I know what this is missing. I listen to the actual kick drum, and it's missing some top. So I would go to the replacement, choose my favorite kick drum sample, slide Dunbar, number 32, for those who are looking. And I just take out the low frequencies from it. It's still there. You can't see the waveform, but this is by itself. And this is the original kick drum with it, without it. Just the slightest bit, And then I go in here. This is the MIDI. And I would do, make sure that all the velocities are the same. Go down here and make sure they're all at 90. 90 in MIDI language is unity gain. In case you guys are looking into MIDI at all or confronting it or find yourself in the room with MIDI, 90 is unity gain, which means you're not adding or taking away. When you see a fader in your mixers and stuff, and the zero isn't at the top, it's like goes up to 0, and then there's some more numbers above it, because that's the same as on a physical. That would be be the same as on a physical mixer, analog mixer, or any of these digital mixers. Let's see. Going back to my business here. Wait a minute. All right. So if you click, you see the broad line here, and even if you can't, that's called unity gain. That's when the fader is not participating in the signal path, and you're not adding or subtracting gain from the signal. Unity gain, you're doing nothing. And it's great when we can, as far as gain structure goes, there's so many volume knobs between the voice and the mix. Like there'll be a compressor on the voice, there'll be a compressor, 2 compressors on the voice as plugins, and maybe there'll be EQ, and then it comes out into the analog world, and there's another compressor, and then it's on the desk, and then there's a compressor on the mix. So like the voice is actually hitting a whole bunch of different compressors in series. And the point is that you don't really use any of them a lot. You just use each one a little bit. And you see that the gain doesn't really change unless you want to use, like if I want to add gain to the voice, I would do it in the analog world. I would do it on my fancy compressors or on the desk itself. But adding gain in the digital world is, I just wouldn't. I would say I would not recommend putting any fader above 0 in the digital world. And if your voice isn't loud enough, then turn down the drums or turn down the bass or turn down everything and leave the voice. A lot of mixers, once they've got everything, when they got every track sort of EQ'd and sounding the way they want it to, they start over in a sense. They put all the faders down on the desk, on the mixing desk, and they just put the voice right up to 0, unity gain, and then start blending in all the other channels only to the point where it doesn't step on the voice. And that's the mix. I personally, I mean, I've done that. I've done that when I've been frustrated with a mix and I've got everything up on the desk and I just go, you know, which is fine because by the time, in my case, and you may want to think about this, the final stage of your mix, whether it's mix groups or various outputs onto your desk or something like that, I think the last volume you should just leave at unity gain and should try and sort out the issues with volume before that. So like the last stage, gain stage on each track is on the mixing desk. So I leave it at 0. I leave it at unity gain. So it's really easy for me to rebuild a mix. If I want to start using the faders because I'm frustrated and I'm really not getting, then I will. You know, it's my last resort, my last like line of defense. You know, I'm like, all right, everything's where I want it. It sounds cool, they're very cool, but voice just isn't loud enough. And then I will just draw down the other faders just a little bit, you know, and that'll do it in most parts, you know. Yeah, I don't know why it got into gain, but I guess I was talking about the kick drum. I was talking about MIDI, and that unity gain is 90. That's all I was trying to say. 90, unity, and then you got that. All right, I don't have to show you that, but you can hear it. So that's one example that I use MIDI. Another would just be, I add a lot of keyboards by myself to productions, not other people's. Like when I'm producing, I'll do a lot of the keys by myself because I can really get in there with the MIDI. And one thing that I see the piano, and so when I think of piano, I think of you, Philip. There's one thing I really like to do in reggae with a piano. All right, it's fine. It's just a chord, bump, bump. It could be one hand or it could be 2 hands. If it calls for it, that's more old school. But when I do it, MIDI, I'm not so preoccupied with the articulation or anything because I know I'm going to go back to every one of those events and I'm going to make sure that it goes from low to high in time. So that like the lowest note comes first. So that it's too fast to hear it as like, it's not like that. I'm not talking about like, I'm talking about like it's an upward sound. And on the guitar, to get the proper reggae sound, a lot of people play ska, they play it like this, chop, 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 because at one point in time, ska music got too fast to play correctly. So people start doing this because it's easier. But the thing about the original ska music and original reggae music is when you play downstroke on the guitar, the notes are going from low to high, and the sound goes up, you know, and you know, that's, you know, music is part of like defying gravity, depending on what kind of music you're listening to. You know, it's kind of like when you think about ballet, the reason ballet was considered so cool back in the day was because these athletes were able to they created the illusion of no gravity. You know, that was the cool thing, you know, or this upward movement, you know, like freedom, total freedom. And so there's something about the reggae music and dance music, and very much the same thing in like Bulgarian dance music, instrumental music from, you know, who knows how long ago. Hungarian folk music was something I've studied a bunch, and and the rhythm, the beats there. You know, if it's a horn section, I make sure you hear the bari first. You know, I don't want to hear the trumpet first. You know, I want to hear it, the event go an upward motion, make an upward motion out of the event. And yeah, that's like an hour's work right there. If I played a reggae track and I'm like going for it, and then I go back and I'll be like listening to a podcast and arranging the notes, but it doesn't sound manipulated. It just sounds quote unquote right, whatever that is, you know, or quote unquote good, you know. I mean, words that aren't values, they're opinions, but I mean, you could say accurate, but in this case, it's not accurate because I'm doing something a computer wouldn't do. It takes longer. I'd say, you know, the editing, as much as I don't have as much to talk about when it comes to editing, it's really important. You know, in 30 years ago, I could mix 4 songs in a day because I had to, and I could because editing wasn't an option. So yeah, 4 songs in a day for, you know, 16-hour day, I can do that. But now I'll spend like 2 days on one song, you know. I mean, that's just like been my MO because I don't want to really burn out or anything. And maybe it's and one thing about COVID that was of great benefit to me is that now people work remotely. Something I've been wanting to do. I've been set up at the studio in Sao Paulo with fiber optics since like 2010, just trying to convince people to work with me down here. And they're like, oh, but you're there and we're here. And, you know, but it was really took a long time for humans to get around to embracing the technology. You know, we've been able to do this for decades, but it took, you know, a pandemic to get people to resort to it and then kind of embrace it, you know, and see the advantages of it. So one of those advantages now is that I work a little more slowly. People aren't in the room. I can listen quiet. I don't have, you know, I'm not distracted, you know, and I don't have to work that. It's not I'm not like working, I'm not racing against a tape or something like that, you know. And I will get in there. I'll just dig in, and my mixes sound better now. I do think so. I think I spend more time on them now, and they sound better. It shouldn't. Yeah, I guess that's like shouldn't be a surprise at all. You know, especially now that I don't pay to work on music. Ever since I built my own place, so you know, take advantage of that because I was working when I was producing records in the '90s. I was working against the clock. I became a producer because I saved so much money. Like the first thing I produced, I rehearsed, it was my band. I found the engineer. So we were friends and he was a great engineer. So, and I had already had all the experience in studios as I've been, you know, in the 80s, there were gigs in the studio. There were freelance gigs and they weren't like records, they were demos. There were such a thing as demo studios in the 80s. And I was 15 and playing, you know, every week on somebody's songs, you know, $50 a session. It was amazing. You know, I thought life was going to be like that. And then the 90s and computers and my whole thought of what, you know, the music industry would be was so archaic by the time I got out of school. It was unbelievable. But I learned a lot from other musicians, from engineers. I'm like, why does my bass sound good? Oh, I use this thing over here. Cool. I'll remember that. And when it came time to make a record, I knew this stuff. That was cool. I knew the engineer. He knew the studio. And it was like $1,000 a day in this studio. And we had $5,000. I was like, okay, we can do this. We can do this. All right. So I rehearsed the band for a month. Half the time, only the horns, because I said, you guys are going to be overdubbing. The rhythm tracks are going to be done first. You guys are going to be overdubbing. So here's what it sounds like. I want you guys to get used to the way you guys sound without the band. And I did the same with the band. So I rehearsed the horns playing bass. I rehearsed the band, the rhythm section playing bass, everybody learning the songs without hearing the lyrics, without hearing the horns, memorizing, you know. We drilled it. We drilled it. We drilled it. We drilled it. We did 12 songs in 3 days. We recorded 12 songs in 3 days and mixed it in 2. So we made a great sounding record in 5 days, and it cost $5,000. And we could have gone to a $500 a day studio and spent 10 days, and it may not have sounded as good because it wasn't, you know, wouldn't have been as the same acoustically treated room. I mean, it was an expensive studio in the 90s to be, you know, 1990 to be paying $1,000 a day was a lot of money. But we got in and we got out. We ran in there and we ran out and made a record with $5,000. And the record, the label was like, wow, $5,000 for this? That's cool. You want to make records for us? And that's how I got into it. So that was the reason I got into this was to save people money in a way. I mean, it's kind of like been my MO, my professional MO for a long time now. And where was I going with that? Can't remember where I was going with that. I want to just talk about how, well, I mean, you know, saving time, I guess. And now that I don't spend money to mix a record, yeah, I spend time and call it vanity, but I want everything to sound fucking awesome when it leaves my room. It's, you know, I've always wanted, you know, I've always identified, some people would say too much with my work. You know, I'm an Aries. We tend to identify with what we do, is who we are, kind of thing. But fuck it, my name's going out on that thing. I want it to sound great. I want it to be awesome. You know, I don't think I'm asking too much. So I've learned to take advantage of time, you know, like, especially after midnight. Wife is asleep, the city's asleep, and I can really get some work done. You know, like at a time when I couldn't get paid for my time. So, you know.
I'd be interested to hear from the others. Are they do they have clients? Do they produce music for other people or for their bands, or what are they doing?
I think I could speak for Nico in Geneva. He is professional producer and does live sound as well, something I've never been able to wrap my head around. But Nico does live sound as well, which is amazing. Yeah. And it teaches. He is a professor as well. And honestly, I think Nico's here just to hang out more than, you know, I don't think he needs my help.
No. I'm here to learn.
See, we never stop learning. Never forget to wonder. That's right. Yeah. And Julie, if I'm correct, is working as an assistant with Nico.
She's my assistant. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, brand new, so I'm learning everything.
That's awesome. I remember those times. It was great.
Yeah, so cool. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. And Nicola, I know your band, the Utopians.
Yeah, I've been working for 15 years, 20 years as sound engineer, and now I'm working in a company in Luxembourg where we are putting audio guide in a lot of museums, all over the world, in Brazil, Argentina, US, and that kind of stuff.
Very
But
cool.
I never produce music. I record a lot for me, but I never produce any band.
You play an instrument.
I play, yes. I sing, I play guitar. I made a conservatory in Luxembourg about 15 years ago. I also play a bit drums, keyboard.
But you know, we work together. I remember now.
Yeah, your face told me something.
We came to Geneva. I think it was with the Bandolus, right?
Yes, the last tour.
Yes, and a friend of Victor on drums, Nico, another Nico.
Yeah.
Great drummer, great guy.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that Philip plays keys. But actually, what I
I'm
want
not a
to know.
sound engineer or mix engineer. I'm a musician, trained as a musician, but more and more I've recorded stuff and had to kind of edit it or mix it, and deal with that side of things more and more recently. So I thought this was like perfect. I'd heard only good things about Victor, who I didn't realize you were in São Paulo now. I thought you were in Brussels for some reason.
Well, Brussels time.
Because of the Brussels time on the workshop. But I think we know people in common. We must do.
So where are you? Where are
I'm
you?
sorry. I'm in São Paulo as well.
I see.
Yes.
I think I'm coming to Sao Paulo in September.
Everyone needs to come to São Paulo.
Yeah.
And
yes.
yes.
São Paulo is awesome.
Yeah.
But are you Brazilian? Philip, are you Brazilian?
I used to do bands when I was younger. I work more at kind of ad hoc things now. I studied jazz. I did an MA in sort of contemporary music, contemporary classical music, and I got more and more interested in improvisation and experimental music and this kind of thing. So I still do some jazz gigs sometimes, and but I've devoted more of my time to sort of free improvisation kind of thing. There's a strong scene in Europe, and there's a scene in São Paulo as well that I sort of take part in. And a lot of that is, I mean, maybe it's an interesting moment to sort of talk about that, the way you record that kind of stuff, which is quite different. But we record gigs, like a live gig, which might be like, a continuous 40-minute set. And then it's like, how do you deal with that afterwards? Like, are you going to listen to the whole thing and chop it all up and make smaller tracks, or how, and so I've just sort of, been looking at all those kind of, facing those things to deal with, and kind of, trying to learn about mixing and editing and sound, because in the end it's about sound. And what about yourself, Joachim?
I write songs, and I wanted to start recording at home, and then let Victor mix the thing later when it's finished, or maybe come to Victor with ideas for songs, and then maybe work on the songs, and then put this album together in a different way than I recorded before.
He's on Spotify as Joe Scholes.
Joe Scholes, yes.
Joe
Yeah.
Scholes. I say Scholes.
Scholes, yeah. It's like an English footballer from
Yeah, I thought.
United.
Yeah.
Who's called
That was a
Paul
footballer's
Scholes.
name.
And I was used to be called by other football players who played with me. I was called Scholes, so was kind of a nickname. So yeah, but yeah. Okay, we're in editing.
Actually, we have half an hour, and I have 3 tracks to listen to. 2 from Nico in Geneva, and 1 from yourself, Joe.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait a minute. So Philip, where are you from?
Well, I was born in the UK. My mum was Chilean, and we moved to Chile when I was 9 years old. And I grew up in Chile, and then I moved back to the UK when I was like 17 or 18 to study. So I've always had like a foot in South America since I was raised kind of bilingual and kind of, and then we moved to São Paulo about 10 years ago.
I was going to say, if you're Brazilian, your English is immaculate.
But
now I got it all. Let's start with... I'm not going to say anything.
Hit me up once or twice or every weekends. We had times, haven't left. You and I became lovers. You and I, now I wonder why you never introduced me to your guys, and how you can just blatantly lie now, hide every single lie behind my back. Wow. But no, I'm so done with your games. You played my heart so bad, said I was just a phase. How you even turned this cold, how your heart even turned this cold. All I gotta say is please don't hit my line no more. I don't have time for you. Don't hit my line no more. Thought we could see this through, but I ain't got time for you. Should've listened to my friends when they said that everyone but him, cause he ain't more than a fake ass. I really had it coming, now you tryna get it back. I think it's kinda funny cause I'm tryna get his back. I have a line full of fine guys, treat me with respect more than I'll ever reply. Hate that I have a spot for this one guy, but I'll have to let him know goodbye. But oh no, I'm so done with your games. You played my heart so bad, said I was just a fake. How you even turned this cold?
Sweet tune. My first impressions are that like it's very balanced. Very balanced in to the point where I would venture that you were listening at 85 dB, that kind of balanced, Nico. I would say this sounds like everything's right in its place where it ought to be. And in a way that like, cause this hasn't been mastered, right? Is Nico still in the area? All right.
It's just a demo. It's just a demo.
Okay.
And today I retouched a few things, and I've remixed a little bit only on NS10s at 70 dB from the talk of it. And but talking now with what we talked tonight, I haven't done any bass alignments with the kick and, overhead type of shit things and blah, blah, blah.
Totally. No, I
and
hear
also
you.
the extras and the backing vocals and all this stuff. But I'm learning, like I said, I'm learning every day. So tomorrow I'm going to go back to this mix and then I'm going to apply what I've learned today.
Well, I think
it's really nice.
what I hear about this mix, it's got a real nice balance to it. I don't hear any kind of fight between the bass and the kick drum. Maybe one thing I would say personally is that I've found that I've been getting more braver with turning down the rhythm tracks of the piano and the guitars doing the jump. There's something about it that it's understood it's there. It's almost like the 1K frequency. It's like it doesn't need to be a little goes a long way. I'm learning that, as long as the drums are banging and the bass is there. Bass doesn't have to be banging, it has to be there. That's hard enough to get clarity out of the bass. The voice is great because I don't hear anything competing with it. Like the horns come in and they're not stepping on the voice.
What about the tuning of the horns? These are my friends from Guiding Star, Denmark. I don't know if you know the guys over there. Are they tuned in your ear?
I don't have time for you. Don't hit my line. No.
Oh, totally. Well, yeah, I wouldn't. Tuning didn't bother me at all. Yeah.
Okay.
But all right, let's say this was your finished mix, just as if it were. What I would say is it needs to be prepared for mastering, because what happens in mastering is that the drums will get lower, the reverb will get louder, and any kind of like the horns will probably get a little bit louder, like the sustained notes. Anything sustained will get louder, and the transients will get brought down, because the point of mastering is to get everything. It's kind of a shame, but we need to remove some dynamics in order to guarantee that we hear the quietest bits, and that the loudest bits aren't going to break the speakers or get punished by Spotify, basically. So that's what mastering is about. That's what mastering has always been about, not being too loud. And which sounds like that's on, usually we think about mastering about making it loud, but we're trying to get the most loud sounding result within the confines of audio limits and stuff, whether they're physical like tape, or whether or vinyl, or whether it's an algorithm on YouTube that will lower the sound if it's too loud, like we spoke about yesterday. So with this one, I would say before it gets mastering, I would make the kick drum louder. I would make the snare drum louder. I might lower the reverb, the effects, because they're going to get louder. And right now they're fine. Right now, I like where they're at. They're going to get louder. And I do feel like there's a 1K thing going on, and that might just be because you didn't really get into it with the EQs and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's this naturally occurring abundance of 1K area, which is one of the things we have to address when we're mixing, right? There's a lot of subtractive mixing, EQing, to deal with what
I do push. Yeah. I do push the 1K on the rim a little bit. That's the only thing I push, the rim shot. But yeah, I totally hear that 1K thing about the keyboard, the keys. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the one frequency that all the instruments share. So you have to be, it starts to build up. I think the voice is in the right spot.
Victor, when we talked earlier, you said something about parallel compression. Is that is that a topic that you would consider here relevant
Yes, I talk about compression a lot tomorrow. In fact,
I see.
hopefully tomorrow you guys aren't in a rush because I tend to go overtime on the last day because we could talk about compression for a whole day. We could talk about EQ for a whole day. So there's a lot to go over tomorrow. And I'm going to probably have to rush through it at some point or, you know, we'll see what you guys are able to tolerate, how long you'll be able to put up with this.
No more questions tomorrow.
Well, the questions are the best part. That's the thing. So I'll try and do my part. I might just rush through it, which is fine because you'll have the video later, you know?
Yeah.
But anticipating the master, that's a big thing for the mix engineer. One thing you want to do is make sure you give them room to work with, and that is headroom, and that is the distance between the loudest peak in the mix and 0. So like here, you could see the loudest peak is minus 4.6. That's, you know, and a mastering engineer is going to be very happy with that. You know, if it was minus 6, even happier maybe, you know, because they're the ones that have to work with gain, and they're the ones that have to make it, they're the ones that make it sound loud and bright. So I don't try to do those things in the mixes. And I work closely with one mastering engineer. I've worked with others as well, but I've learned a lot over 20 years with this one guy. So our job gets easier and easier, you know, as far as me learning from what happens to the mastering, that what I can do to better predict the result, you know. And so now I know that the snare can be really loud. That, and I don't mean loud like big reverb, not sounding loud. I mean, I'm just talking like the gain on the snare drum can be really loud, and on the kick drum, you know, competing with the voice easily, because after mastering, the voice is going to stay where it is. And the perception to me is like when it's mastered, the voice isn't the thing that moves, it's everything else that moves around it, either closer or farther away after the mastering, you know. So we need to exaggerate our mixes. They might sound goofy before they're mastered. They might not sound, they won't sound like a mastered, you know, if you're comparing it to something that has been mastered, you got to anticipate what happens. And that's why I say it's really important to just repeat the process over and over again, get used to what happens to your mix or your production or after it's been handed off. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. That's mixing. I do want to talk about mastering a lot tomorrow, because it is a very crucial step, and we should not be mastering our own mixes. Big no-no. Of course, sometimes we have no choice. There's no budget. But even, I would say, even if there's no budget, if you know somebody if you have a friend that's an engineer and they do mastering and they're not the best in the world, but they'll do yours for free, do it, because mastering is about objectivity. It's got to be taken out of the hands of, you know, the people who've worked with the production all the way along. It's got to be given to somebody with fresh ears in a new place with different acoustics and a different setup, and so you can hear what. If we master our own mixes, whatever problem I have in my room or in my speakers or in my ears, and let's say my mix has too much, let's say my mix has too much 5 kilohertz in it, that frequency. And it's because maybe I don't hear 5 kilohertz so well. The mastering engineer will hear that. I won't hear it. If I'm mastering and I still don't hear 5 kilohertz, I'm going to double the problem. You know, it's almost like audio incest or something. You know, you just need more genetic material at that point in the production. It has to be given somewhere else, because objectivity is the name of the game there. Moving on to Joe Scholes.
Yeah.
What are you going to tell me?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's not a finished thing. It's a layout that I worked on today, and there are a lot of mistakes in in this, but I send it to you, and let's listen.
It's a demo, right? You just put this together today. Just wrote the part.
It's to see how I can arrange this one.
I wasn't born so much as I fell out with a broken heart. No one could say that it got any better after such a start. So I only learned how to play one part. Here's the part I played, I'll tell you. I was born to disappoint you. I was made to make you look bad. The facts are in, and there's no denying. I'm the biggest burden you could ever have. When you introduced me to your friends on that foggy day, they acted kind, but looked kind of underwhelmed. And one of them seemed to say that you should get smart, prepare to walk away. I was born to disappoint you. I was made to make you look bad. The facts are in, and there's no denying. I'm the biggest burden you could ever have. I was born to disappoint you. I was made to make you look bad. The facts are in, and there's no denying. I'm the biggest burden you could ever have. Oh.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
All right, so I'm not going to make any engineering comments.
Yes.
I'm not even going to make like arrangement comments, but yeah, that's a great tune. I mean,
there's an influence from the Slackers there, right?
Maybe, possible, yes.
Yeah, we can hear a bit of Slackers.
Okay.
Very good.
Thanks.
Like the only way I think I could address this tune, which is
yes,
clever and it's well written. Okay, you do this thing where you have like a couple of bars before the chorus, right? Like one extra bar or something like that. I would say and it happens 3 times. And the first time or the second time, one of them.
Yeah.
Like I would do it once because it would be more effective if it happened once. It would, like either you do it, and I would do it the second time because it wouldn't be expected. Or maybe if you did it the first time, and then it would be expected, and then you didn't do it. Something that's good. That combination of expectation and surprise is important. But I think it would be effective using it once instead of twice. But then that last one, that last time before the fade out, that I could imagine being an instrument or something, like a horn melody or maybe something on an organ. Like that one felt like to me it wasn't the same as the first two. It wasn't really like generating the anticipation that the other two did.
I see.
But so I feel like that one could be like a moment for an instrument, you know. But like the first two, I would say choose one. And I guess the classic one would be to extend it the second time. But I don't know. I liked it the first time, and then the second time around was like, all right, well, I know, you know, this is.
Yeah, you already know it.
So it might be cool to just do it the first time and then the second time, because it is the first time you're hitting the chorus, right? So give it a little more build. You hit the chorus, the hook, and then the second time just go straight to it, you know. And we got another rhythm from Nico, since you guys have not been so forthcoming with your work. Dig this singer. I dig this singer. It's really cool. Like that voice.
She recorded a voice with, you know, those little microphone headset microphone. Yeah, it's not a proper mic. I had lots of difficulties to have a proper sound, but it's still not there yet. The quality of the recording is very, very low of the voice.
I like so at what stage is this one? Is this like your other track? Like where it's just been put together?
Yeah, it's like it's a demo. I just sent the rhythm, which was a demo, and then I sent it to her, and then she sent it back to me just to have a feeling of the song. And we're supposed to work on the song now, especially the lyrics and the structure and the arrangements and things like that. So she just recorded it on the, you know, those little headset thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the voice is really cool. I think this one, you might, once you get into mixing, like these horns, I could hear them maybe causing a problem with the voice, you know, like stepping on a lyric or something. You know, it really depends on how you guys make the arrangement. So I can't make that call yet. You know, I don't know, because I would like to hear the horns louder. especially in the beginning. Like if I'm going to treat this as if it were a mix, which isn't fair at all. One thing I heard on this might just be because you didn't address it yet. This might be for you. This might be a mixed thing. But the vocal reverb, I heard a lot of low frequency information. Like I heard some lows coming back from the reverb.
Yeah, I'm experimenting with this new Universal Audio. It's called Top Line Suite for vocals. It's a Universal Audio plugins that just got released maybe 2 months ago or something, and just bought it, and I'm experimenting with it. So this is actually a preset that I haven't been editing the presets. I'm just like, okay, it sounds all right. I just put it on.
Totally. No, for workflow, it's great. I mean, you don't want to be bogged down in sound when you're thinking about music. You don't.
And I do work a lot with presets.
With?
Presets. Like when you try out a plugin, I work a lot with presets, and then I edit out the presets or change a little bit the presets. But I always try to get, the broad sound, the core sound of the preset, and then edit a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, I have my default setting on my plugin, so I guess that would be my preset in a sense. Although presets definitely you have to work on them, because you have to work them because they're made to be heard in solo. It's like I was talking about yesterday about like the showcase. You're listening.
Yeah.
So if you got the voice on solo and you're auditioning presets, they're all going to sound good in a way. I mean, they're all big and occupying the whole space. But I would say you would have to do that in context. You probably need the rhythm playing while you're auditioning presets to hear how it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
They'll all sound good in solo. That's the nature of the preset. So you do have to. You're starting with a block that you have to chip away at until you've sculpted. You definitely have to think, and that's like the pizza or the sculpture, or however you want to think about it. You have to take away what you don't need. And there's a lot, and that's why that changed. When I started working digital, I realized it took me a while, but I realized I just didn't like the sound of plug-in EQs when you push the frequency. There's something about it that I don't know. I couldn't say why. I don't have the words for it. But then when I heard about subtractive EQing, where you actually hunt, seek and destroy the frequencies you don't want, and what's left is beautiful. That's I love plugins for that. So I'm very subtractive with the EQs with plugins. If I wanted to add something on an EQ, I have the luxury of an analog mixer where I could do that, and it sounds right to me, physically right to me. Something, I don't even know why I'm sensitive to it. And maybe it was like these could have been decisions I made 25 years ago when digital audio still didn't sound that good. I mean, plugins they've come a long way. I haven't given them a chance. I got a few new things in the toolbox just because Metric Halo gives them for free. They come free with the hardware that you buy. It's like Universal Audio. It's like the brand of conversion and DSP that I use is Metric Halo, which I like because they're Macs. They only work on Macs. They don't work on Windows, so the support is much better. You can always get them on the phone or something, and for someone in Brazil, that's really important because I may as well be on the moon if something breaks in my studio. You know what I mean? Like I'm so far from the people that can fix it. May as well be on the moon. But I really dig that one. And the only thing I was thinking was like, wow, I haven't heard such a low frequency in the reverb in a long time. Because I do evil high passes on the effects and stuff like that. Because like the low frequency, I really want more control over who gets what frequency at any time. And I mean, the voice, I don't know if it's what you did or if it's the presets. I don't know what it is, but in both of these, the voice is quiet, but it's clear, which is cool. Like you can hear, like the voice is pretty relatively low, especially in this one where I think the drums, like if this was a mix going to master, I was like, oh, these drums will survive the master. You know, these drums are got some more, they're more upfront, you know. This is something you'll still hear after the mastering, you know. So I you know, there is something to it then if you're using these presets to get the voice in a starting, if that's what you're doing for your square one, it's a great start. It really is, you know.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I got to check it out.
Mhm.
Do you have to use them on their DSP or can you just buy the plug?
I have this Universal Audio sound card in my studio, so I just buy the plugin and then it runs on the card. I think it's an Octo. I don't remember, Octo something.
But it would
Yeah.
work as like audio units or
Yeah.
you know.
DSP card.
I do everything in the box though. I don't have any external gear. Unfortunately, it's a bit expensive. I have great preamps and great microphones, but then once it's in the box, it's in the box. Yeah.
I think I would rather great preamps than, you know, than a lot of outboard things that are that I need to compensate for, you know, inferior recordings or something. So what they call the front end, the microphone, the preamp, you know, you get the front end right and everything is easier. It's easier to mix. It's easier, you know, a good recording is easier to mix. There's less we have to do. I spend much more time fixing certain things and, you know, there's a couple of things have come through. To be honest, the two things that I have Latin Grammys for were the ones where the shit was already awesome. I mean, you know, there was not that much for me to do. Yeah, I did the vocal treatment. But really just the arrangements, the players, you know, in both instances, two different producers. I have 2 Latin Grammys as the mix engineer. And in both instances, there are 2 different producers, but they both recorded at the same place where they had Massenburg preamps, which are my favorite thing in the universe. There are reasons they're so goddamn expensive. They're incredible for me. GML, if I had 16 of those, I would open up a recording studio and I'd be, you know, I'd be rich or I'd be poor. I don't know, but the sound would be fantastic. Anyway, so both of these productions recorded in the same place, mixed in the same place, mastered by the same person. 2 very different records, but they both went through the same production chain, 2 different producers, and they both won Grammys. And I remember thinking, why isn't everybody calling us up every time they want to make a record? I mean, why wouldn't, you know? But I guess it might be the producer's secret, you know? I mean, it's funny how producers can be protective of their engineers, you know? And you think your name would get out, and it doesn't. Or maybe I'm just tripping because enough people know about these things, and you know, but in both cases, it was already recorded at a level that you just wish everything was recorded like that. It just makes everything easier. You know, great tunes, well arranged, well performed. And it's like I said, like yesterday, you know, a great tune whatever that is, whatever that makes us say this is a great tune, whether you sing it with acoustic guitar or you fully arrange it, it's easier to arrange, it's easier to play. A great tune is easier to play. Musicians, it's easier, it's more comfortable. It's more interesting, it's exciting, and it's, and then it's easier to record, and then it's easier to edit, less time editing, easier to mix. I imagine mastering, probably not too difficult either. It's, you preserve those transients from the original recording, man. And it's just, I'd say in both instances, when those two records, my biggest contribution was not trying to put quote unquote my sound into it, or trying to, I just stayed out of the way. Producer knew what they wanted, gave it to them with pleasure. And yeah, I mean the records that I work a ton on, a lot of times it's because the song wasn't interesting in the first place, and it just made, all right, we're supposed to mix on Friday, but we're not done yet. We're recording some new backing vocals, and we're going to add some percussion, and we're going to do this and that, because it isn't where they want it yet. And maybe it's not because it's a bad song. Maybe it's a terrible song. It's not even a song. I don't know what you want to call it, but Madonna's song Music, I mean, it's just a soundtrack to a video with Borat. It's not, it's just one chord the whole time. So it has to change all the time. Sure, things drop in, they drop out, they're interesting. There are a lot of interesting production moves going on because the song itself is just one chord. And the melody isn't even that interesting, So the real work comes in the post-production and something like that. I don't even want to say it's a poorly written tune. It's kind of a non-tune. There isn't any contour to it or anything. So that puts a lot of responsibility on the mix engineer. Make something boring sound interesting, But those who do it, they make the big money. Those are the ones who make the big bucks, the ones who can make a boring. I can't do it. I don't have those tricks and things. My specialty is organic music, and making it sound natural, and hopefully, and when, like the Slackers are great songwriters. I've been mixing their stuff again on and off, like this year, a little bit last year. Oh, it's a relief. The songs already sounds good. It's a great song. It's not much for me to do. So we all wish we had those projects, but for those of us who have those skills, to create like kinds of distortion, like some people want drums to sound distorted. That's a thing. I've never done it in a way that I thought it sounded good. So maybe I don't know I'm not the guy for it, but then again, people don't call me. People who want their drums distorted, they're not calling me to work on their stuff. So it's all good, You stay in the game long enough and you're your own filter. People associate you with your work, and people who like what you do are going to call you. And it's like self-fulfilling. And with that, I guess I'll let you go. Please,
Thank you.
I know, Nicola, you've got a bunch of tracks, so just send me as few as possible, and check them out. And Philip, you too. Ciao.